So we are talking about the movie Cyborg X. This one is written and directed by Kevin King, who also directed Zombie Hunter. Now this one stars Eva Monroe and Danny Trejo. Now the story here, I actually have to say I thought this was going to be an asylum picture, but it's actually been produced by Arrowstorm Entertainment, who have made quite a few films that I've actually enjoyed. They've done a Mythica series. They concentrate more on fantasy stuff, but they have obviously dipped their toe into science fiction, and here we are. But I have to say this film is more along the lines of an asylum picture. Now, I couldn't tell this movie if it was trying to be kind of somewhat kind of retro and kind of like almost like a Turbo Kid, like what did in 2015, make a kind of post-apocalyptic movie and a kind of little bit sort of self-aware. But it seems to be playing it pretty straight, so I'm not quite sure if it's meant to be like an ironic film or not. Now, the story here basically is we have a kind of post-apocalyptic world, basically, where machines have taken over, a la kind of Terminator, basically, and there seems to be a kind of some kind of like intelligence which has basically turned the majority of humans into kind of cyborgs by placing these kind of like baned looking masks over their face, basically. It's up to a kind of like a handful of human survivors basically to try and kind of like to defeat the cyborgs basically, and kind of find out who's behind it and kind of take them down. Now, I've mentioned Turbo Kid, and that came out last year basically and was a kind of a Mad Max clone, but it was kind of a knowing and loving wink to those kind of like Mad Max clone that we had in the 80s. And I would have to say this film is a comparison to that, but it's minus the charm of Turbo Kid. In fact, I would have to say this is kind of more of a mashup of like a kind of Mad Max rip-off, like an 80s Mad Max rip-off, combined with the kind of the 90s craze of having like cyber this or robo that. So it's kind of those two genres mashed up into a movie. And like I said, it plays like a basically an asylum pick, almost a trauma pick, I guess you would say. And it's like I said, it's playing it pretty straight. I think they maybe should have maybe make it a little more campy, because it kind of looks like they're actually trying to make a serious movie in some points. There are a couple of occasions where, okay, clearly this is just very silly. We are told, for example, that there's virtually no food. Everyone kind of looks like super buff and healthy. All the women's kind of like hair and makeup is all perfectly done, stuff like that, basically. Now, on the plus side of this film, I would say there are some pretty damn good gore effects, believe it or not. There are actually some quite surprising prosthetics here, which I thought looked very good. And then there's a few kind of practical effects which I thought look pretty damn good. The cyborgs themselves, they do look on the silly side, I have to say. But I still kind of like them. I thought they still look kind of quite badass, despite being somewhat cheesy. But cheese is kind of the name of the game with this film. This is really a very kind of like lowbrow B-movie flick. It really is just kind of like super cheese, very silly. Obviously, if you were to kind of sit here and nitpick this, there'll be nothing left basically. So I'm not going to go through and go, well, that's not scientifically accurate and all that kind of stuff, because they just load that kind of stuff. But it's just kind of, it's obviously very cheap. It feels like it's been kind of put together pretty quickly, to be honest with you. The budget was apparently around $1 million, which is, I think was a Kickstarter for the majority of it. But it just feels like it's been in kind of like somewhat sort of slapped together. It doesn't kind of feel like there's too much kind of thought behind it, I have to say. You've got Danny Trejo here, who's more or less a cameo. He seems to be doing a whole ton of these kind of like very low budget genre movies where he appears for kind of like 5 to 10 minutes of screen time and then kind of disappears again, and this is no different. It's pretty forgettable, to be honest with you. If you are a fan of the kind of like the post-apocalyptic films, you kind of may get a kick out of this one. It does have a few redeeming features. I do like some of the kind of the visual stylings here, but it's so cheap in other aspects as well, and so inconsistent in its kind of in its internal logic. Our cyborgs seem to be bulletproof one minute, but when a hero character shoots them, they seem to go down. Doesn't make sense and things like that. But what do we expect from this kind of film? It just seems to be just kind of put together very kind of cheaply and kind of somewhat sloppily. with a couple of redeeming features. There you go. So I'm going to give this movie a 3.5 out of 10. I wouldn't really watch it unless you are a hardcore B-movie fan, or you really like your kind of post-apocalyptic films. I've compared it to Turbo Kid, but Turbo Kid is a far superior film than this one, and I feel maybe the tone of this film would have benefited if it was maybe a little bit more sort of self-referential, like sort of Turbo Kid. But then I guess it would be a Turbo Kid rip-off on the other hand. So who knows? Anyway, that's my review for Cyborg X. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.